And good morning, Bills Mafia. That red light is on, which means this week's episode of Under Review is officially live. My name is Joe DeRosa, and thank you so much for tuning in as we preview a very exciting Sunday night matchup in Orchard Park between the Buffalo Bills and the New York Football Giants. So thank you all again for being here. I hope you got your morning cup of coffee in hand. What's the word I'm looking for? Let's go.
Previous play will go under review.
And once again, everybody, thank you so much for being here. And joining me today is the cover one and only Kevin Masseri. Kevin, how are you doing today?
Living the dream, Joe. Glad to be here. Glad to be here on a beautiful Saturday morning before a Sunday night football game. So just enjoying life, diving in. Ready for topics, man. Love topics.
Oh, I love topics too, dude. And thank you so much for being here. It's funny you say beautiful because here in Southern New York, it is not. It is rainy. It is gross, but we press on anyways. Now, Kev, I'm going to ask you real fast. Last week, I had some major technical difficulties. I actually didn't see any of the signature or any of my intro play on my end. Did you see it?
I did. It was beautiful as always. Enjoyed it.
It's beautiful, man. Yeah, this is a reoccurring issue that RJ, who's in the chat right now, what's up, RJ? Thank you for being here. Saw last week, and anyone who watched the show last week at the start saw we had some tech issues. It seems they're recurring for me only and no one else, which I guess if I have to be the sacrificial lamb for the failing aspect of technology, then so be it. But before we kick things off, Kevin, I got to give a little shout out, and I hope he was able to log in because he actually texted me he has some trouble. But if you could see my nameplate today, it says "Happy Birthday, Dad." And the reason I put that is because you guessed it. It was my father's birthday this past Thursday, Mr. Joe DeRosa Sr. The reason that I am a sports fan, the reason that I am a football fan, and also the man who is a New York Giants fan that is somehow allowed me to pursue the Buffalo Bills on my own accord was his birthday. I wanted to give a quick shout out to him before we kick things off to say happy birthday, Dad. I love you. I will see you later, actually, because I'm headed back home, and I hope you enjoy the day and enjoy the weekend. You deserve it. So kicking it off, thank you all again for being in our chat today. This is awesome. Happy to see you all here. Kevin, let's get started. It was a brutal, to me at least, loss in London. It absolutely stunk to see our key players, Matt Milano, Daquan Jones, obviously some other ticky-tack injuries happen. Just really an ugly all-around game. So obviously we have to move forward because we have a new matchup coming up. But just give me your final thoughts on that, what you really took away from it, and how the Bills can move forward.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those days, Joe. They're going to happen in this league. It's going to happen, hopefully not very much. But the Bills have had two of them. One, an emotional Monday Night Football game. A strange game from the start. Just took a little bit for the offense to get clicking. Josh to see his reads, and was just one of those Jets games. Looked like they were the best team in the league for 3 weeks, and analytically they were. I mean, they still are in a lot of ways. And then they ran into a Jags team, 9 a.m. for their bodies at least, on a Sunday morning. With basically playing on concrete. I've never heard players really complain about the field like that. You heard Von Miller you heard Taron Johnson. So ultimately, it's not an excuse, but the league got the data they were looking for. They got the data of the other team staying there and readjusting their bodies and being used to it. And that's what they wanted. I personally wouldn't have used a big AFC game to do that. I probably would have picked an AFC NFC team where average looking opponents maybe, and I'm not saying to judge your teams that you're scheduling, but hey, they're all excuses. This is going to go down in one of those Miami Sun games from last year category of Bills fans are now going to complain about the field. They're going to complain about the sun. You're making excuses. The team just was tired. It happens. Like, it's sports. The other team's good. And they'll take care of anything when you're sleepwalking. It took them 2.5 quarters again, 3 quarters in some regards. The defense did. The defense showed up.
Yep.
But ultimately, they overcame some big injuries again that Josh Allen says took the wind out of their sails. So a couple of factors there. And then on top of them playing a team that basically wanted to take away the run, which is an interesting strategy against the Bills, and just said, we're going to have Josh Allen beat us on the outsides because they tried to take away the middle of the field too.
Yep. And they did a good job of it too. I mean, you look at Josh Allen's spray chart, seldom touched the middle of the field. And whether you want to attribute that to him looking off or not having time to let those plays progress, maybe just an automatic, I want to feed this to Diggs on the boundary, whatever it may be, the Jaguars played him tough. I gave my thoughts on the London game overall last week, but really just to kind of summarize, I'm not a fan of it, never have been a fan of it for any team. It's not just the Bills. I didn't like it for the Falcons or I don't like it for the Ravens and Titans this week because I feel like it just throws such a huge wrench in your preparation, in your schedule, in your travel, the adjustment in a week where, you're not going to the West Coast and it's 3 hours and maybe you can get out there early in the week and kind of like rest it or whatever. This is a bigger time difference. It is something where these players are, need time to get acclimated. They walked into a game where they were, facing a rested team. And that's just the way the schedule broke. But I agree with you. AFC, NFC would have been a little more ideal just because, again, it's not just the rest factor. It's the fact that the NFC implications are just way less. This was a big AFC game, Kevin. I mean, the Jaguars are a team that could be at the forefront of the seeding race when all is said and done, given the fact that they have a lot of talent. I wanted to win that game because I thought it was actually important for playoff momentum down the road. And unfortunately, despite the fact that it was a 5-point effort, it was a sloppy, ugly game. And you could just tell this team was out of sorts. And it's disappointing. But again, we got to press on, move forward, and put it behind us. Because honestly, I mean, again, every Jags game, this is what happens. Like, have they ever played a normal game against the Jacksonville Jaguars? Because I don't think they have. It's so annoying. So real fast, shout out to Whittle. I haven't seen Whittle in here in a while, so this is awesome. Welcome, Whittle. Thanks for watching, man. And I want to pull this up from RJ because it'll segue into our topic today. Little nervous about this game. You have the Giants that have nothing to lose and will make this game their Super Bowl. Also, there are 25 revenge games, players/coaches. Still think we win, but close. Kevin, what do you think of this comment?
I think it's tough. I get where the sentiment comes from with there's nothing to lose. Like, if there's a game Brian Daboll will win, it could be one like this when everyone thinks he sucks and it's a terrible opponent. I just don't think that they unfortunately have a healthy roster. Now, full strength Giants, 500 record Giants, I would agree with this sentiment. If this was under normal conditions, I think that this is fair. I mean, I think this is a fair to think. That's why the league put this game on Sunday Night Football. Mm-hmm. But RJ, they don't have a right tackle. They literally don't. Put on the injury report late in the week, which is always a bad sign.
Yes.
Might have to play him hurt, which is Evan Neal's already bad. They don't have an interior offensive line at all. They're playing backups that have been very poor, and they're playing a left tackle that's been one of the worst in the league. So it's a really bad offense or offensive line in front of Tyrod Taylor, and then with no receiving in the first place, they don't really have any injuries there, but it's not good. And then by all accounts, I don't know that they're going to play Saquon Barkley behind that O-line. I really don't. They could. Minimal snaps, maybe. I don't think you'll see anywhere near 70% Saquon on full strength, maybe 20% trying to get him back for the run. But ultimately, I think Brian Daboll is looking for production, and especially with this offensive lineup, trying to get himself a quarterback. That's where I'm at with this situation. Maybe you'll see a moment or two, early or late, one or the other, that scare you. I just I don't see this roster being able. Everyone's like, well, we said that about the Jags. It's like that roster is exponentially better on a Sunday at 9:30 a.m. in London, with them having extra rest.
Yeah, extra rest. Also, I never slept on that Jags team. Did I think the Bills could win that game and should win that game? Yes, because I thought the Bills going into that game were the better team. They had every reason for you to believe so, given their performance. They also were the best DVOA team after, I think, week 4 DVOA team ever. Like, that bodes confidence. This Giants game, I'm nervous about it for the reason of implications because of where I live, not because of the matchup. I'm nervous about it because everyone I know is a Giants fan, including my father, who actually just commented. Shout out to you, Dad. Happy birthday again. Love you. But I'm surrounded by Giants fans. Therefore, for me, this matchup is personal. The Bills need to win this because it's personal, because if they don't, I'm surrounded by people who are going to mess with me for a full week, and I don't think my tiny little heart and head could handle that. But what I will say to that point, Kevin, is, like matchup wise, it shouldn't even be a competition. And it's not even for the fact that we're playing an inferior team with starters who you can't sleep on. Daniel Jones is not playing. Tyrod Taylor hasn't started a game this year. Saquon Barkley, even if he does play, you're coming back from an ankle sprain. We don't know how often he's going to be used. We might not even see a lot of him if he is healthy because that O-line has nothing to it. It has nothing to it in the run blocking aspect. It has nothing in pass blocking right now. They have let up the most sacks in the league. They are on pace to give up the most sacks in NFL history right now. It's nerve-wracking because it's Brian Daboll. Like that's the whole thing. Everyone's worried about the coach who just left Buffalo to become a head coach, and the red circle is around it on the calendar, and he's coming into Buffalo for the first time, and it's hoorah, we're playing our old team. Let's really take it to them, and let's show them that we're not bad, and it's my old team, and I want to beat them. But look at it the other way. As much as Daboll knows Josh Allen, McDermott knows Daboll. There's a vice versa to this. There's ebb and flow. McDermott's defense, despite the injuries, still held a Jacksonville offense with a lot of talent to about 11 points through 3 quarters. And the only reason they caved is because they were gassed from being on the field so much. The Giants defense right now is giving up points. They have talent and they can create pressure, but I just don't see a scenario where even if the Giants play us tough, that they can hang enough or last long enough to surpass the Bills. You might get like a the Bills win like 27-17 or something like that. I could see like a 10-point spread, but I don't think the game is ever going to feel particularly close, barring any unfortunate circumstance, which I'm actually going to knock on wood real fast. But yeah, I mean, any final thoughts on that comment, Kevin, before we get a little more in depth with the matchup?
I mean, not for me. I mean, it's the NFL, and I mean, these guys are paid. Their defense is fairly healthy. So, like, to be fair, anything can happen any day, but it's not any more likely than any. I mean, I think the odds are like 95-5, which is astronomically high for the start of a Bills game, like the start of a game where two opponents are playing each other.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just like all the spreads and everything are lopsided. And RJ elaborates, I'm actually more nervous because they have so many players out. It's like the more it looks like we should win by 40, the closer it feels. I get that. I do 100% because like, it's just being jaded from this team, right? Because anytime we've thought it was going to be a cakewalk, it's not. This team always finds ways to excite you. I get it. Like I've shared that sentiment before. I think the difference between this is you're not seeing a healthy team. You're seeing a team that's limping into the game with offense that is literally a backup quarterback and backup offensive linemen who have been, by all metrics, terrible. But, again, we'll see on Sunday. They might have a juice in them where they try to play the Bills tough, and I wouldn't blame them because a lot of teams do this. So, RJ, I understand the sentiment, but I do think this game shouldn't be close. Again, shouldn't is a strong word. But let's get more specific now. We'll talk about just some of our other players. Obviously, in Jacksonville, a lot went wrong offensively. It seemed like the team, again, just maybe from travel or being out of sorts, looked off in a lot of ways, from everything from the line kind of having its blunders to the running offense just having absolutely nothing against a really stout Jags rushing defense, to talking about key drops and kind of miscues. Kevin, what do you think truly offensively went wrong in London, and how do you think the Bills fix it against the Giants?
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw some, inability to move the ball, get into positions to convert first downs. And that's what struggled. They punted. They didn't really have a flow to them until later in the game. So offensively, they weren't great. Defensively, they played really well, but they couldn't get off the field on third down. They were missing some key components at parts of the game, and they were just continuing that time of possession was really bad. It came back a little bit by the end of the game. But really toward the middle of the fourth quarter, it was bad. It was like 40-10, 40-12 before the Bills accumulated some time of possession and made it like 40-20-ish, which was still bad. But they couldn't get in a flow. They let the other team convert big third downs, Joe. And ultimately, as well as the defense played, you can't allow 10 third down conversions. That's just too many. That's like bad football amount. People will say, well, the offense struggled. That number needs to get better. And there was too many conversions in Kyrie Elam's side of the field. And they just weren't making a big play when it happened, except AJ Epinesa, who probably kept that game close and at least 6 to 14 points off the board in his play.
Yeah, oh, man. I mean, first and foremost, AJ Epinesa picked the right time to have a career game, and I feel even more annoyed that that game ended up being what it was, because will remember the Epineza performance, but the world won't. He deserves his flowers, man. I mean, how he's performed this year on the edge and just been a presence and using the length he has to his advantage, which is something that, you kind of slowly saw him start to do over the course of his career. But it feels like he knows what he is now as far as his length with his arms, as far as how he can be an edge rusher, and he uses it. He single-handedly took the Jaguars screen game almost completely away on his side of the line. It was beautiful to watch. I mean, that's just kind of what he's capable of. But it's a shame because everything else kind of seemed to go wrong. And you have what ended up being a Bills defense that really bent until they couldn't bend anymore. I think offensively, you're going up against a team that you have seen in weeks past give up a lot of rushing yards, especially to Miami last week. Achane had another, fantastic performance before his injury. I think the way that you attack and kind of go about this game and recover is reestablish your running game and reestablish it with James Cook, with Damian Harris, with Latavius Murray. And I think, again, as Eric pointed out many times, like more under center, because that is really where the Bills are having a lot of their strength offensively stem from. It's not that you can't run shotgun at all, but there is a lot of reason and evidence to support that play action Bills are probably the most difficult offense in the NFL to defend. I mean, Josh Allen's ball faking ability is stellar. Their running backs, when they get any sort of gap in that offensive line, are going to make you pay for it, and they can get yards after contact most of the time, assuming it's not blown up in the backfield. I feel like a little bit more of a lean on under center, kind of exploiting some of the injuries the Giants might have, making them guess, maybe pressure that they try to send you that you can kind of take away with just some quick out or a hot route that goes behind a blitz. Like, these are the ways that I can see the offense kind of recovering. But I do think that in order for this to be a bit more effective, it has to fall on a few things. And the first one I'll say, and Kevin, I'll bring this back to you, is James Cook. I looked up his EPA per rush for each down yesterday. On first down, he is in the hundreds, but on second and third, he's in top 10 in both categories. So, Kevin, let me hear your thoughts on James Cook about last week and how you can foresee him performing in this game.
Well, I've been a James Cook critic more so than others have been, across whether fantasy fans, other teams. I think that he's been slow in terms of being able to see his progressions and where he should be running. I don't think he initiates contact at all. He's very good in open field, and he was really good in second half of games against Washington and in Vegas. Other than that, it's been tough for him to get going even in those games at times. I thought he's had some really good moments on the field, but the Bills have shown a propensity to change out running back when needed and go to Latavius Murray and go for some easy yards. So I don't know if that's just a system or kind of a scheme thing, or if they were like, hey, we need to get him in, for this possession and switch out James. But I'd like to see more from him. It is really just his first time full-time starter. No, not pounding the alarm yet, but I have seen some scary moments to where since he's been leading the AFC in rushing, he ended up having 25 yards since. Right. So ultimately, that's over 2 games. So ultimately, you would think this is the game he gets going, but is this the game also that Josh just has all day to throw? Or, they only have one player with over a full sack. So, really, are they going to be able to do what they want with the Giants outside boundary corners? Or are they going to try to make this game short, run the ball a lot, don't let Tyrod Taylor do anything? It's possible they go with that approach because they've done that approach to bad quarterbacks, believe it or not, and make them make a play. So I'd like to see a little bit more from James Cook to alleviate Josh Allen. But I'm also fine with the rotation. If it's not getting done and he ends near negative yardage again, swap it out. Let's see what other running backs can do. Because he's had some great moments to make it look like I was wrong, but then he's had 8 straight quarters of like, okay, that's what I was talking about with him not making any headway for his team. And then Joe, lastly, the team's actually run blocking okay. It's not the top of the league,
right?
But it's fluctuating between 10 and 14, which is good enough to be better than some of the numbers we've seen from Cook. And then obviously the Bills hover between 1 to 3 in pass blocking. So the offensive line's been much improved, but I need to see a little bit more to help him out. And I just think he misses too many holes. So we'll see if he can correct it.
Yeah, there's actually a comment here that actually refers to that from MB. He missed too many holes, did it in the postseason last year that could have went for a big game or touchdown. I want to see more Harris. So to kind of go off that point, I do think that Cook's been in a way underperforming, and I don't like it. I think against the Miami game, it felt like he was having early success. Miami kind of changed their defensive approach, and it felt like he was getting shut down, and the rushing attack was kind of getting shut down until they got to garbage time, and it wasn't really mattering. And then you saw, like, again, more use in the pass game to kind of get him going. So I have always been of the mindset that the Bills are not going to have a 1,000-yard rusher. I just don't think they do, because they are reliant on Josh Allen, as they should be. That's their franchise quarterback. Any play where the ball's in his hands gives you a chance for success. Any play you have against even stout rushing defenses like the Jaguars, where it's in a back's hands, might not go as well as you want. I do think, however, that one thing that this offense seems to have done in the past that I think works, and I'm kind of disappointed I didn't see more of it against the Jaguars, was kind of kindling Cook's production by offering different backs to kind of get the rushing attack started. You would see, and I saw this against Vegas, I saw it a couple times against Miami, they kind of swap over to Murray, they swap over to Harris, whether it's short situations or long situations, and they get, maybe a first down run going with them where they get a couple of yards or something that just kind of moves the chains a bit, and they establish that there is a tandem of backs that's going to be attacking you. It felt like against the Jaguars, and maybe this is because they felt that their line was dictating the game, I'm not sure, that they didn't do it enough. I saw Murray and Harris come in at moments, and there were a couple of good runs, but I've also seen Murray and Harris have more kind of a lean in this kind of way where you open things up for James Cook and establish that, okay, if they're hitting us with Cook instead of Harris and Murray, that either means they're going to try and bounce outside, or maybe they try an inside run, or maybe they try something with duo, or maybe they play action us and hit us. Like, I think you have to kind of set the table for James Cook. I think this is how the Bills' offensive rushing attack can be really good, is that if you kind of offer these different looks and continue to lean on these veteran power backs that have a different style and a different approach, you are going to begin to see James Cook emerge and have more productivity as a result. And I think, like, maybe it's just game planning. Maybe it's who you're facing. And maybe it's the idea that you don't want to have to do this because Cook is supposed to be your one. Maybe it's a confidence thing, but it's worked. And I think that it can continue to work. And this is a good opportunity to do so. So, Kevin, any final thoughts on the rushing attack before we move on?
I don't think any from at this point, but I would like to see some more production and help Josh when needed. It did seem like the Bills were trying to go to that last week. And the Jags were there to stop it, as they, like I said, it looked like they were in a full out run defense, and they rank high DVOA run defense. So that's what I got for you.
Yeah. Credit, like, final thoughts on rushing is just credit to the Jaguars rushing defense too. Like, this is another thing I feel like in all the discourses we forget. Some teams have good rushing defenses and good linemen and good linebackers that just make plays and can get to the backfield quickly. Like, the thing about the Jags and rushing defense was, even when the Bills had some sort of open space, their linebackers were bearing down on the run and making good plays and not missing tackles. And that's just credit to them, man. And you could attribute it to, again, maybe the fatigue of traveling to London. This team wasn't as galvanized and didn't have as much juice, and the Jaguars who were rested did, and that's possible. So I think, like, we've seen signs from James Cook this year that he's going to be very productive, and I think he still will be. I do believe that there are times where you run into some walls and things can slow down and good defenses can just play their game. Again, the Buffalo Bills defense, which has been notoriously good, has gone up against some good offenses and has shut them down. That can happen to us just the same. So I'll reserve my judgment for a true evaluation of James Cook, but I agree with you, Kevin, that I would like to see a little bit more, and I think it is possible by moving some things around offensively. But as we continue on in our offensive discussion, I also want to talk about some other players, non-Stephon Diggs offensive players, including our tight ends, including our receivers. So Gabe, Knox, Kincaid, whatever. Kevin, obviously, we've seen so much discourse involving all these players this past week, rightfully so. Post-loss discourse always breeds some different finger pointing and whatnot. What are your thoughts on just the non-Diggs contributors on this offense? And do you think you need to see more out of certain people, or are people just performing well?
I think you got to give Gabe Davis his credit. I think he's performing really well, looking like a 1,000-yard, 13-touchdown season. Any team in the league would take that. So I think it's easy to forget his production. Maybe we focus on one negative player, one drop, or a situation that, you'd like to see more from Gabe for some reason. But he's doing every bit as much as a top 3 wide receiver too. Like, he's competing against the T. Higgins, the Jalen Waddles, as much as we think those guys are better, I guess. for whatever reason, statistically not true. Like, especially this season, and that's the season we're talking about. He is a top flight receiver too at the moment. Like Devontae Smith, he's up there with Devontae Smith. Most of his metrics are really good. I've heard people say stuff like, well, I like Cooks better, or I like
Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, Cortland Sutton, or other situations. And I'm like, Cortland Sutton's probably their one, right? But like, he is a top 2 receiver on every team in this league, or almost all of them. And he's a top 3 and he's been very productive. And Josh Allen trusts him. He trusts him in scramble drills. He trusts him deep. He even trusts him in 50-50 balls. He trusts Gabe Davis to win more than he loses. And that's, I think, what's the hesitancy with the other weapons, is that he trusts his 2 boundary receivers, which is what you want your quarterback to do. And I think sometimes people are infatuated with like, well, where's Sherfield? But where's Hardy? He's running, these verticals, and I'd like to see him. And you saw that the Bills target him once last week. So maybe he'll start to get going. But where the tight ends, they're kind of cannibalizing each other in 12 personnel, but that's how it is. Like, that's kind of how 12 goes. This 12 doesn't go with a dominant tight end all the time. You run out of that. You throw to your boundary receivers out of that. You do so much stuff out of that, where maybe one of the tight ends doesn't go tomorrow, Joe, and you see a bigger game because they're just going to get a larger target share.
Yeah, I mean, that's just spot on. And you also have to remember, this is a Stephon Diggs-led offense. Like, I think a lot of people going into this season, and myself included in certain components of it, had this kind of delusion of grandeur where this ball was going to be spread evenly amongst everybody, that there were going to be like, and it's still possible to do this, but kind of like Hardy's getting 500 and Knox is getting 500 and Kincaid's getting 500 and Diggs is going to have another 15. Like, Stephon Diggs dominates the target share in the receiving core because he's Stephon Diggs. You're going to throw him the ball. You have to throw him the ball. The idea of the supporting cast that I think gets lost on a lot of people when we evaluate the Buffalo Bills offense is that it's not always stat sheet reflective how big their impact is. The idea that, these guys aren't producing or they aren't effective or whatever, I think is a little misguided. And I'm going to start with Deontay Hardy. Deontay Hardy, I have made a joke, and I think I've made it in Spaces. I made it last week. I consider him the fullback of the receiving room. And why I say that is because Deontay Hardy is like another example of a chess piece that you move around to open things up for the rest of your receivers. Look at the Gabe Davis touchdown against Miami. I mean, the way Hardy is playing on that ball, if he moves up, this safety now has to come down, and that gives Davis a one-on-one matchup. That's the whole point. Obviously, they're paying him a lot of money, and I think people are kind of off put by the idea that they're, for his position, I should add, giving him that much money for the absence of like crazy plays from him. Deontay Hardy being on the field, stretching defenses, moving around, and having to be respected, and until they stop respecting him, and then he starts getting more opportunity, which, by the way, has been happening. You saw it against the Jaguars. You saw it in times against Miami. He is productive even when he's not getting the ball. And that's kind of the idea of this whole entire offensive structure. The 12 personnel that this team runs right now with 2 tight ends. You said it, Kevin, how it's affecting their run game. That's kind of the point, in addition to having these pass catchers. Yes, it'd be great if Dalton Kincaid was truly getting all of these targets and he's having 100-yard games and he's being productive. But Dalton Kincaid is getting open. The idea is that they want him to get open. That route might not be going his way, or Josh might look off of him for whatever reason because there isn't a rapport built, which we've seen that happens with Josh Allen and new receivers. But also 12P is meant to establish a better rushing attack, which so far this season it has been, except for this past Sunday. So I think when I think about the supporting cast, and I think about guys like Sherfield too, who's a tremendous run blocker, a part of the reason why he's been brought in. Hardy, who again is a field stretching guy. He's fast, he's shifty. Teams have to respect it. Guess what? Now Diggs and Davis are getting better matchups. Gabe Davis, who, Kevin, whenever you're on the show, I always appreciate that you bring it up because we always end up going into like a Gabe Davis tangent, and I will continue to do it as long as you're here because I defend him. I think Uber put a tweet out. His projections for the year are over 1,000 yards and like 12 touchdowns. And people are mad about it. They're mad about it, Kevin. Why are you mad about that? Gabe Davis as a wide receiver too, literally having 1,000 yards is amazing. And he's had key plays in every game. Like, I feel like people have seen T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, or not Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and they've seen like these crazy productive numbers, and that's fine and dandy. And I would love that for Davis, but you also understand that a wide receiver 2 and an offense that contains Stephon Diggs getting 1,000 yards would be tremendous. And this is kind of my whole idea, is just like the supporting cast that Josh has, someone said it in the comments, is the best it's been, in my opinion. And I agree with that. And I think that we need to, one, be more patient with how these guys are, and two, understand that if Josh Allen is moving this ball with his arm to Stephon Diggs, there's probably more back-end work going to create such favorable matchups for Stephon Diggs. And also, if this offensive identity in 12 personnel, when they're not running, is meant to be a, hey, everything gets easier for our alpha receiver, you should celebrate this. You should be happy about it, because guess what? That's making things easier for your offense. That's making things better for Josh. That's making this more productive against what they're going to go up against, our tough defenses down the stretch. So I'm getting animated. I apologize. Kevin, I'll throw it back to you because I'm taking up too much time. But please, like, any more thoughts on just this room and some other thoughts on how his supporting cast has performed, what you could say?
Yeah, I mean, analytically, Gabe Davis has been great too, Joe. And like, if you just want to use raw stats, like, I know that's sometimes what the thing that people like. He's also 22nd in receiving yards. So, like, he's quite literally a receiver 1 by that standard of what he's been able to do. He's, 4th in the league in receiving touchdowns. Like, what metric do you need? Like, more catches, I guess? But that doesn't signify anything. Like, if he has 1 catch for 17.8 yards or 2 catches for 8 yards, Joe, it's the same thing. So ultimately, he has the biggest big play percentage in the league. He has the biggest first down conversions. So it's not like he's getting these useless yards or 100-yard play in a blowout and then a 100-yard play and then a 60-yard play. He does get big plays, but every single time he goes for a first down. So these aren't useless plays that he's able to convert. 15 first downs is really good at this stage. 15 first downs out of 18 catches. I mean, his big play rate is like 76%, meaning that how much it affects a game. His targets are very useful and meaningful. And he has all the, he's better than Devontae Smith in just raw data, like Jalen Waddle. Obviously, Jalen Waddle missed a game. Like, there really isn't a receiver 2 right now that's better than him in terms of some of his metrics and even just box score. Because sometimes that's the thing that's thrown against Gabe as well. He only had 800 yards. So ultimately, Joe, he's a receiver 2. He's the second option, and he is the second option in this. He is the second option in this offense.
And
I
a good one.
Say that any more clear. He is your next guy.
I will always default to this one thing I saw on Twitter one time, and it made me so inexplicably angry that I never forgot it. I don't remember who said it. That's probably a good thing. I think Judge posted something about Gabe Davis and the amount of his touchdown percentage compared to other receivers, and someone said that's all he does. Yes, that's all he does. Good. Why would you want anything else? If he's catching touchdowns, that's a good thing. Like, oh my goodness, it just drives me crazy. And again, like, you're pointing all these metrics about his first down percentage and like his effectiveness in big play. He's a deep threat receiver. If he has a high big play percentage, there you go. That's the whole point. And again, another comment I've seen, like the game against Washington, what was it? 1 reception, 35-yard touchdown. I think that's what he ended up finishing with, unless he had some back end catches. Fine. He had a touchdown. The offense got going. That mattered. It's just like, I just feel like the discourse around Gabe Davis, I will always defend him. You guys know I will always defend him, but I am so damn tired of just some of the disrespect that this man is getting, especially this year, when in every game he's been productive and he's had a touchdown. He is a good wide receiver too. He's actually a great wide receiver too, and he's playing exceptionally well. And if Gabe Davis stays healthy, I'm knocking on wood again, stays healthy and ends up performing as his projections are pointing, or even just a little bit worse, but like you're talking 1,000 yards and like 8 touchdowns, you should celebrate that, especially in an offense with Stephon Diggs that always dominates the target share. And I want to pull this comment up from Autumn RE. For me, I care more about the person who is open being targeted and the target catching a ball. Do that, and it's a recipe for success. Our top dogs aren't going to be open every play, and that's okay. Thank you, because I completely agree with this. It's just if someone's open and the ball's moving and you're sustaining your drives and you're scoring points, good. Like, it's stat sheets are cool. I want all our receivers to look great, and I want there to be like high fantasy value and the respect and everything. But I just think back to some of the best offensives you've seen and how they work as a unit and kind of like this fortified machine where everyone contributes. Like I've said this about Kincaid, and I'm going to ask you a little more about the tight end room, Kevin, but I've said it about Kincaid, where if Kincaid's role in this offense is opportunistic first down catches or like moving the chains on an early down that ultimately leads to something bigger, again, as a rookie tight end, which is a position that kind of is usually slow to develop, I'm cool with it. That's fine because it's productive. It's good. He's helping. That's what you want. So, Kevin, I just want to ask you, it'll be our final offensive note before we go to defensive side of the ball, because I know a lot of people in the chat are asking about Dorian Williams, McDermott. Just your thoughts on the tight ends, what you've seen from them, what you think about their production, and do you think there's more to come later in the year, especially in this game?
Yeah, I think there's more to come. I mean, I think everyone's predicting like when's the week that Kincaid's going to go for 103 touchdowns. I don't know if that week's coming, but I do believe that these two get a lot of targets. They kind of share them based on who's open, different situations. I'm not overly worried about the tight end position. It's been very effective in the run game. It's been effective at times getting other receivers open, just like Hardy has. So right now, I think they'll have their day when someone finally is like, we're not going to have Stephon Diggs beat us, which teams are not doing right now. They're putting on Kader Kohu, or they're going one-on-one coverage with their corners because they think that the option with Diggs going to get his anyways. We might as well take away everybody else. That's how teams are playing them, actually. Mm-hmm. So, we think Diggs is going to beat us with this connection with Josh. So we might as well not allocate too many assets over there. And that's kind of the solution, especially against, Miami and Jacksonville. But, we know what happened in Miami and in Jacksonville. Diggs was still found frequently. Just a matter of them taking away the secondary options did amount in enough of a defensive performance by them to be a victory. So I think the Bills will adjust. And we've seen plays where Kincaid's open up and Josh is taking Diggs. But I think that as he builds that chemistry, he'll start to take Kincaid. And he does have a good relationship with Knox. So those two are always going to kind of be in each other's space in terms of targets. So I think a big tight end day is coming one day, and we're gonna have that aha moment in the next one of these weeks coming up where they're both going to go for like 7 catches and 80 yards and a touchdown.
And again, I'll tell anyone watching, listening after the fact, if you have not seen Eric Turner's thread on Dalton Kincaid, please go find it on Twitter. If you do not have Twitter, download it and then find that thread on Twitter, because it is nothing's tell all. It is a very good indicator of how Kincaid is performing in this offense, even when he's not getting the ball and he's getting open, or there's plays that just he simply defenses are looking for him. Like, I think there is this one thing that defenses have done for the Bills where they kind of knew that because they were going to be in 12 personnel, like you said, Kevin, it's almost like we'll cover everybody else and we'll just make sure that like it stays in one place with Stephon Diggs, because it's almost like there's more room for error to put that pressure on that dynamic versus being able to spread the ball around, which when you've seen the Bills do it, they're unstoppable. Vegas and Miami are great examples of that. And like Kincaid might have a play where he kind of hits the middle of the field. He has a linebacker tailing him and a safety crashes down. And that option for that quick gain is not there. Or Kincaid goes to the boundary and he's open, but Josh looks off or he doesn't hit him. There's been plenty of times where Kincaid has gotten open and hasn't gotten the ball. And I think by all accounts, that is boding well for the future, because teams are expecting that because he's doing this and not getting looked, that maybe they don't have to change things defensively yet, until Allen starts changing things by forcing the ball his way and getting production. And then teams are going to worry, because now our plan of only covering Diggs, which it's not every single time, I'm not saying that's every play, but like our kind of mindset of like keeping this in one place versus now it's leaking, there's holes in the foundation, and we're seeing the ball get moved to different parts of the field to different positional players more frequently than it's been. That is where I think things are going to just truly explode for the Bills offense. I really think you haven't seen I don't want to say a fraction. You haven't seen the full potential of this offense yet. The offense knows they haven't played their full potential, and there's a lot more to come down the stretch. And with that, Kevin, any final offensive thoughts before we transition to the defensive side of the ball?
Nothing here. Looking forward to D.
Yes, I'm looking forward to talking defense too. But before we do, how about a nice message from our good friends Aaron and Greg over at Cover One to tell you about the Premium Pass? And real fast, Kevin, I probably won't see this play, but I'm going to see the blue bar. So I'm just going to hope that I cue this correctly. And if I don't, and there's like an awkward pause for me, you all know why. Aaron, Greg, let's hear it.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Yes, the Cover One Premium Pass available in the description below. It is the lifeblood, the foundation of this network, and you subscribing to it brings us so much. Every single resource that we have for pulling statistics and being able to watch these games back, to have discussions like today and on all of our shows, comes from that pass. So I implore you that if you are not already subscribed to the Cover One Pass, the Premium Pass, please do so. A lot of great perks, including the t-shirt, as they mentioned, signed by the Cover One crew, and the premium Slack channel, which if you are a person that likes talking about the Buffalo Bills, that is the place to go. It is literally nonstop Buffalo Bills discussion, as well as some other channels with some cool features that I could tell you about, or you could see for yourself by subscribing. Kevin, you ready to talk about some defense? All right, then let's talk about some defense. So this is going to be the first topic, and that's, can the Bills overcome the injuries? Now, obviously, if you have eyes and emotional compass that is skewed in a direction of negativity, that means that you saw Matt Milano suffer a season ending, as in he's going to be out for pretty much the whole season, bearing a playoff comeback, as it seems. Same for Daquan Jones. These two players go out with key injuries that are going to sideline them for pretty much the whole year. Thankfully, we have at least seen that Milano's might not be like a total, terrible thing. Same with Jones. If this team is in the playoff conversation and they get there, then these guys could potentially come back, but nothing's certain. But what we do know is we do not have them. And this team now has to overcome this defensively. Kevin, what are your thoughts on these injuries, and how do you think the Buffalo Bills defense can fare without these players?
I think the one thing that Sean McDermott does, Joe, and this is his majority of his time, is coach a defense. And do we complain sometimes about situational football or timeout usage or certain things? Yes, there has been those issues, or the way other things have turned out, but it can never be how he coaches a defense, most notably a back seven. And then what do they have this year, Joe? A front four. So something that maybe they've struggled in a little bit is they've gotten good advanced analytics, pressure rates, win rates. Haven't always amounted to much on the field at times, and that was one of Jerry Hughes' biggest thing, at least toward the end of his tenure, was he wins all the time, but does it actually affect the game? It is now. They lead the league in sacks. They finally put together a rotation that, to me, is dominant. They have some dominant 5 defensive ends. Even Kingsley Jonathan has been very productive. Shaq Lawson's every bit as much as good as a run stopping defensive end. Everyone's like, well, play Kingsley over Shaq. The issue there is, what did you see Travis Etienne get some room last week? And Shaq Lawson wasn't playing. So there is a correlation there. So you got to kind of think about the run too in this scenario. And then Gregory Rousseau is good in both. So don't forget, they're going to get Shaq and Gregory back. And then, they're going to get Balin Spector back in the mix. They're going to get potentially right now their corner 1 and 6th-round pick Christian Benford back in the mix. They were missing some players last week. Not anything crazy after the Trey White injury, but enough of their defense that you did see some of those third down issues. So I do think he's going to coach a defense. Thank gosh he took 2 third-round linebackers back-to-back seasons when many people were mad about it. One's turning into one of their best players on defense. The other is going to be huge depth with the 7th-round pick and Balin Spector as well. So thankfully they put in a bunch of assets to linebacker. They still have their old wily safety vet who will get it done more than they don't. They still have their starting nickel and that vaunted pass rush with Floyd and Rousseau, and Vaughn's back in the mix, and Ed Oliver's season that he's having, and they're going to insert Poona Ford, which I've heard say he wasn't active for other players, which was a little bit concerning. But then if you went out and traded for Poona Ford with the Denver Broncos, people would probably be pretty happy, and that's given up an asset like a 5th-round pick, 6th-round pick. So ultimately, I think that the defense is still in good shape. It can't overcome a lot more. here. But I think that it is in a good position, and especially with the great news that's been floating around lately this week that the two players could return in January based on most likely not having any ligament damage as of this point with Matt Milano, and a pec injury being pretty. 8 weeks is tough, but 12 weeks is could be reasonable there. So we'll see how that all turns out over the course of the next 3 months. But definitely some high feels on the defense. And yes, it's going to take a step back. But Josh, you're going to go as far as Josh Allen takes you, Joe.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this team's identity, the defense to me has always been I don't want to call it a luxury. You need good defense. It matters, especially come playoff time. But I think, this offense has been what needs to be leaned on. And when you couldn't lean on it in the playoff game and the defense actually started settling down against Cincinnati, it didn't matter because there were no points being scored. That's going to play a role. I think you saw that kind of in action against Jacksonville. Like, this defense, despite the losses, had still, again, 11 points through 3 quarters with all of their injuries. And yeah, they were giving up yards. I don't care about yards if it doesn't lead to points, because again, what we've seen from Sean McDermott's defense has been an opportunistic unit that is attacking the football and knows the time and place and the key situation where they need to do it the most, including in the red zone where they hit Lawrence twice and got 2 fumbles out of it. So I think when we talk about the Bills defense right now as a scheme, as McDermott running it, I don't want to say not worried, because I do have some concerns, because you have to put in a rookie to fill in for Matt Milano, who has been a very big staple of this defense. And you have to rely a little bit more on Kaiir Elam, at least right now, who I didn't think played the worst game in the world, but certainly wasn't great. There were a lot of reps I think you could want back from Kaiir Elam in that game. But again, Kevin, when you look at this defense, and you brought this up with some players, Christian Benford, who had a clean report this week and is likely playing tomorrow night. Dane Jackson got back into practice. We'll see. If not, it is going to be Elam. I think it actually should be. I'd rather give Dane Jackson the week. You talk about still having Terrell Bernard, who's kind of emerged this year as a really capable middle linebacker who's very good in run defense and has been playing pass coverage pretty well. Obviously, you still have your safeties. And then I think what I have said to people, and where I think the most important part of this defense remaining intact is still intact for the most part. Obviously, losing Daquan Jones sucks because he was debatably the most productive defensive tackle in football for the start of the year. But you still have Ed Oliver, who's playing really good ball. You still have Leonard Floyd. He's playing through injury, but he's still been very effective. You obviously have the depth coming back with Shaq Lawson. I think Kingsley Jonathan has had some really quality pass rush reps as well. AJ Epineza has emerged this year and has been playing really good ball off the edge and has been disrupting passing lanes with his arm. And then, of course, Gregory Rousseau is returning from injury, most likely, as it seems that his report was clean enough to get in that game on Sunday. The defensive line and the identity of this team, I should say this, the identity of this team has been stemming from its defensive line, stemming from its pass rush, the pressure that Sean McDermott has been able to generate by using this line as well as his linebackers. Do I think maybe some things get taken away by Milano going? Yes, because now you have to hope that Dodson, Williams, Spector, whoever is taking the role or that rep can rush gaps like Milano can and can sniff things out and be able to penetrate the line of scrimmage to get these running plays, whether they're going out or in. I think that could be a growing pain for the defense, where you might see some runs hit home that shouldn't have hit home because maybe of tackling issues. But when you talk about this defensive structure as a whole, I think the pass rush is still intact. We also have to remember Von Miller is coming back to this defense. He is going to be getting more snaps. He is going to get more action, and they are going to have that ideal dreamboat defensive line formation on passing downs with Miller, Floyd, Rousseau, and Oliver, and then backers if you need them. I think that this team is still going to create pressure, still going to be a formidable pass rush, still have a high win rate and clinch like they've been clinching. And that's only going to make things easier, as I've said a million times on the show, for your back end linebackers and secondary. I do, to answer the question, I think they can overcome it. And I don't think it's as irrational to say that this defense with Sean McDermott at the helm could still be a top 15 or top 10 unit, even despite what they're facing. The question I have is, how do teams adjust knowing that this team is going to rely on pressure? And is what Jacksonville did to our defense in London going to be kind of the norm for how teams attack the Buffalo Bills defense? And Kevin, I'll actually spin that question back to you because I'm curious what you think about it.
I'm very, very, very interested in how it all turns out, Joe. Like, I think that there's definitely some names on the trade block. I think the Bills get active this year. I think you've seen more lower end deals across the league. I think you've seen some situations to where players are more eager to play for winning teams in this sport, just like on other sports like hockey or baseball, and even basketball. So I think that it's trickling to football, where teams are starting to trade 6-round picks, swap of 6th and 7th, doing things like that. And it doesn't need to be the Bradley Chubbs or the top end of, Von Miller when he was traded for Christian McCaffrey. It can be like a Dante Jackson from Carolina, a Jeremy Chin, who can be a safety replacement in a third linebacker, and they can kind of run that role as well. So I don't think it's crazy that the Bills can overcome these injuries, Joe, with a potential outside move that's pretty low budget when the Bills have 10 draft picks. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's something to watch out for in this whole situation. And right now, I think they do have enough. But like I said earlier, I don't think they can overcome too much more here. But that defensive line still runs 4 deep on the defensive interior, and then 5 deep on the defensive ends position. And then, even deeper if you're considering Shaq and Kingsley Jonathan. So there is plenty to like there in this room. And I think that pass rush is going to heavily help the corner situation. And the game would have been different last week, in my opinion, if Christian Benford played too. So they are getting back Gregory Rousseau, Christian Benford, and a couple other pieces that can overcome this Milano situation. But Dorian Williams, I think, is the topic of the day in terms of what are we going to see. Mm-hmm. I give him all the snaps until he struggles. If you need to go to Dotson for some reason, now that Dorian has a week to game plan against the Giants, let him play. Get your 2 third-round picks out there, because quite frankly, that's your future at the linebacker position. And you drafted for it. I want to see Dorian go out there, earn the job, and then you have Dodson and Spector behind him anyways.
Birthday Boy says Milano is a star. Replacing him allows the opponent's offense not to have to adjust to his replacement. Vaughn is still a beast. Yeah, it's really tough replacing Matt Milano, who is an all-pro outside linebacker. But I have said this to a lot of people. I have full confidence in Dorian Williams. Did he have the best game in the world against Jacksonville? No. I mean, some tackles were missed, but I also thought that for the situation he was thrown into, he had some really, really nice reps in run defense and in pass defense. And I think of all the games to experiment with the hand you've been dealt, because obviously Milano's not walking through that door. Let the young kid play. I fully agree. I think Dotson, what they leaned on last week was kind of just closing things. And like if Williams, they felt like he was getting too flustered and being over aggressive and maybe missing plays, get him out for a couple snaps, let Dotson come in, throw him back into the fray when he's kind of cooled down. I think you could potentially see that in stretches this year or even just in the next few games. But I do think at the same time, this is why you draft Dorian Williams. I mean, good teams draft depth. We had starters. Those starters are not here right now. So this is the opportunity to allow this 3rd round pick from Tulane to kind of grow his wings. He has all the traits to be really good in this position he's in, because I've talked about Dorian Williams as a middle linebacker in the past. Now we're talking about him as the outside. He does not have to call plays out as often. He does not have to process nearly as much as Bernard's been doing. He has to read. He has to react. Greg said this on a show once in the preseason. Dorian Williams looked really good in those preseason snaps because Dorian Williams wasn't being asked to command the defense. And that was the caveat for him being a middle linebacker candidate right now. Now he's playing in that same position. I think his athleticism bodes well for how he will perform in pass defense, because again, we've seen him cover the middle of the field in certain plays really well. His length is able to get his arms up. He's able to deflect passes. He's able to tip things. He's able to read it. I think if he can just clean up the tackling and the one-on-ones, I really do think that this is going to be a good opportunity for Williams, and one where he actually thrives well enough to be a serviceable replacement for Matt Milano. Now, I'm choosing my words carefully there, because replacing Matt Milano is probably the most difficult thing you can do for how good he is. But I think if Dorian Williams can just play like up to 75% of that level, that's what you need. And I also am curious how they kind of attack defenses with more of these linebacker rushes through gaps with Williams, if he's capable of doing it. And if he is, that's just another wrinkle. So to answer kind of this, and to answer Dorian Williams talk and to talk about it with you, Kevin, to what you said, I do think that Dorian Williams should play. I think he should get his opportunity. I think keep the leash a little tight in case he's having issues and you need a veteran to come in and quiet things down and kind of settle things down. And granted, you're hoping Dotson can do that. That's wishful thinking. But I would like to see more Dorian Williams. Absolutely. I think he deserves his shot. I think you drafted him for a reason. He's a young guy. You need his athleticism. He can give it to you, and this is the time for him to do it. So now let's move on to the second to last topic, and that is the Bills defensive line versus the Giants offensive line, aka I don't even know what you want to call this matchup, because this is just, and again, it's given the Giants injuries, given the fact that Andrew Thomas is not coming back, given the fact that Evan Neal might not be playing at all, or at least in a healthy way. I mean, talk to me about this matchup, Kevin. Like, what are you expecting from it, and how do you see it panning out?
To the earlier question, way earlier in the show of why I don't think, I mean, this is an important. So if the Giants came in with a really good offensive line, they're winning here, and Tyrod Taylor was there, and there's a lot to play for, I could see the scariness. The problem is you're talking about an offensive line that's awful, that has no continuity together. They're 32nd ranked. They played a guy, Jalen Mayfield, last week, who scored a zero. Didn't win a single rep. Zero. Don't think you'll see Jalen Mayfield this week, because they're going to go with one of their other bad offensive linemen. But ultimately, they don't have enough inactives to inactivate Evan Neal. If he's hurt, they're going to have to start IRing or cutting players right now, like this today, in order to make a healthy roster. They could activate Evan Neal and put him on the bench. But the problem is, you need those game day spots. You need those jerseys given to somebody else. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to play Diggs hurt. It'll be whatever. We'll run through our other receivers. This is a situation to where they have like 6 healthy offensive linemen. You quite literally need to IR somebody. You can't just give him a jersey and then rest him for the day and play him in emergency only. You need to straight up use those active roster spots, because Andrew Thomas is hurt. Shane Lemieux's coming off an injury. John Michael Schmitz is out. Evan Neal's banged up. Matt Pert, their swing tackle, is out. So you're talking about one really starting offensive lineman who's not very good, and Marcus McKeithen starting at the right guard position. And then, Ben Bredesen is their starting center, who's been playing a lot of snaps because there's been so many injuries. Mark Goloinski's been a guy that's bounced around the league, had okay moments, not playing very well this year. I can't even tell you who's the right tackle if Evan Neal doesn't play. I don't know. I really can. I think they'd have to go with recently signed 3 days ago, Yadni Kajust, to start at right tackle and he's on the practice squad if Evan Neal can't go. The Bills D-line's the best in the league right now. They're feasting against good offensive lines. Miami was the number 1 offensive line coming in. Tua only had gotten sacked once prior to the Bills game. They got after Trevor Lawrence. They got after Aaron Rodgers and Mac Jones at times. I mean, it's a really good offensive line. Sam Howell was basically throwing free balls up. I just don't know. The offensive line that got them was really good was Vegas, and they were trying to run the ball, and Jimmy G gets the ball in literally 0.13 seconds. So, Joe, this is a huge mismatch. I just don't see how they overcome it, even if they're playing good on defense. The Giants, I just don't see how they overcome that style. They will not be able to consistently move the ball. And I don't believe Saquon plays, but we'll see.
Yeah, I just don't think it's wise to put Saquon out there this week. And it's not like, oh, I'm a Bills fan, they're playing the Giants, don't bring him out. Like, obviously, we don't want Saquon on the field. He's really good. But I think it's negligible to put him on, because it's not a winning situation. And Barkley, like, as good as he can be at breaking tackles, the man's coming off ankle sprain. There's going to be backfield disruption. It's going to happen. This defensive line, the last time they played, one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and the Washington Commanders had 9 sacks in the game. And like, you want to put this running back out there and hope that he can create something, and maybe he can every now and then. And that's the same thing for Tyrod Taylor. Maybe there's a lot of penetration and they're guiding people out of the way, and Taylor runs for a first down here and there, or guts you with like an 8-yard run, something like that. I could see that happening. But again, like, you talk about all these offensive linemen missing, and where I'm kind of hyper focusing on is JMS not being in the game, because even if he hasn't played up to par, he's still your starting center, right? Like, losing a starting center alone is brutal. Having to lose him and lose your starting quarterback, I guess that actually might, in a weird way, benefit Tyrod Taylor, because he hasn't been playing with the ones, you know what I mean? But like, at the same time, I just think this defensive line right now, even with losing Daquan Jones, is good enough to create this penetration, to create these pressure looks, to make things more difficult. I think Tyrod, who's a quarterback that we have known as Bill fans, have already had middle of the field issues, seeing things. It's just, you're hoping that Tyrod can bootleg or run out of the pocket and like make a play down the field. And even if he does a couple times, it's not a sustainable way to play against a good foundational defense like the Bills, despite their injuries. So I think that's the biggest matchup. And I think that's the only matchup you should truly be watching right now, because it's just so impactful. And again, this team has kept themselves in games and dominated games by winning in the trenches consistently. I think that's just another example of what's going to happen. And again, if this was a Giants line that was ranked low, but mostly healthy, I could see a scenario where they kind of have things work in their favor. These circumstances are genuinely so hard to climb out of, because again, you have a right tackle or whoever that's coming in off 3 days being with the team. Like, it's tough, man. And the edge rushers are good. Like, even at 75% with like Leonard Floyd or Gregory Rousseau, I just don't see a world where this offensive line can hold up for a whole game. Can they have some reps where they win? Can they have some drives where they actually sustain them? Yeah, anything's possible in the NFL. And I think Tyrod, who, you know, drops back deep, who might have these opportunities to hit deep options, whatever, like, yeah, sure, I think that could happen. But do I think that's serviceable enough to last you a whole game? Do I think you can sustain that style of play? Absolutely not. I just genuinely don't see it happening. And I want to pull up this comment from a guy named My Wife Hates My Hi-Fi, just because that name is funny. How about Balin Spector? What are your thoughts on him? Coming off the IR, I mean, at this point, all hands on deck in the linebacker room. It's good to have an extra body there. I think, though, when we talked about Balin in preseason, he had like that first week where he was getting some 1 reps, and you were like, oh, wow, like, good for you, Balin. Like, I'm excited to see how you pan out. He got dethroned. Obviously, like, if your 1 snaps are going to, and this was when he was still healthy, going to Terrell Bernard and going to Tyrel Dodson, I think it's telling you that they don't feel he's the guy that can kind of inherit at least the middle linebacker position. When we talk about him for depth at the weak side position, though, yeah, I could see some benefit from him. I think he has good ability in running defense. I think he can shed blocks well, and he can create plays in the backfield. I think there's a world for him, and I think he's going to be a part of the process now because he kind of has to be. I just don't think you're going to see him be a starter unless he really shines. What do you think about this, Kevin?
Yeah, like, I like Balin Spector. I thought that I posted some, go on my Twitter feed, some comments made by the Bills safety core and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer that said that he was commanding and doing really things well in training camp. And there were some talks that he was in the rotation for the spot with Bernard. Ultimately, will he translate to a weak side, more of the Matt Milano position? I don't know. I'm not sure we can see him in that role. I think Dorian Williams is a natural fit here. That's what he was drafted for. People were mad that he was drafted as Matt Milano's backup. That should tell you that the Bills really needed depth there, back-to-back years drafting a 3rd-round pick, and that they trust him in these scenarios. I think he adds a good veteran piece, second-year guy in Spector. He was in our offense or defense all last season, but he's coming up on veteran status now with the banged-up nature of this linebacking core. I think that you see him come in and potentially play where needed. I think he'll get activated today with the open roster spot that the team has. And they put in Klein there as well. So they put in a multitude of different talented players to try to see how they can figure this thing out. Ultimately, they were lucky they had so much depth there with him being able to come off and the roster positions working. So I'm interested to see him, but I do think there is a world where he can play. And he was off on the side training last week, so this isn't like his first real week getting used to it. He played all preseason, got hurt in like the second half of the Bears game. So he had an entire preseason. He didn't just come off of a PUP situation. So I think, Joe, there's a world where you see him, but I'm going with my 2 3rd-round picks to start this baby off and going from there.
100%. I think the fact that we're even having a conversation about Dorian Williams in the first place shows why you were supposed to draft depth for Matt Milano and everything, because it's great to have your starters, but you need insurance. You do. It's a physical game. It's a physical defense. Something can go wrong at any time, and depth behind that position matters. It's why you sign guys like Poona Ford, who are proven starting D tackles in the NFL and pretty good years for him to boot. And he's coming in as depth to fill in for Daquan Jones or to be behind Jordan Phillips if you need him. Like, this is kind of why when people see these draft picks and they wonder what the hell they're doing, think of this. Think of this circumstance right now. The fact that Balin Spector, who was a late-round pick, is coming in to be depth that could actually be serviceable is huge. You need that for a team that wants to win a Super Bowl. All hands on deck. I agree with you, Kevin. I see a world where Spector plays, but it's not starting. It's going to be depth to fill in, like maybe, or even if they want to run like a 4-3 look like they did last week, and maybe he comes in on the outside or something. Like, sure, I could see it happen, but I don't know like how much you'll see of him this week if they want to give him on a pitch count, or if they really think that his depth might be worth it to keep him in and call upon him when they need to. And RJ, I'm loving his sentiment just because like he's the only person in the Bills community besides me. But again, my nerves are just from pure there's too much at stake for me in my personal life for this to actually matter. RJ's the only person I've seen that's genuinely worried about this game. And I hope you're not right, RJ. I really do. But to this conversation, and this is going to bleed into what we talk about for our final topic today. Hopefully this doesn't become a Cincy situation where RDL looks bad against backups. If that happens, I am absolutely going to lose my mind. We should get 5 to 7 sacks on this OL. Here's the thing. It's not Cincinnati. It's not Joe Burrow. It's not Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Hayden Hurst, who actually had a pretty good game. And yeah, sure, you could try, as my father in the comments following up kind of says something similar, in that amount of slaughter will be less if they try and run. At least a big body can be in the way. Let Tyrod run on the less time Josh has the ball, makes it a little less unbearable. They might try a quick passing game with Tyrod Taylor. They might try to run the ball. But here's the thing. When those get shut down, you have nothing else to lean on. That's the problem. You might get away with it for a little while, but this is why I'm talking about this game being something that's like sure, maybe the first or second quarter or even into halftime, we could be like, what the hell is going on? We're only winning by 3, or we're actually like tied or something like that. But you expect it to last the whole game. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to last the whole game. And I don't think that the Giants' current receiving core truly has anyone that you have to look at and say, like, this person has been dominating the league or has been very good. We need to take him out of the game plan. Like, could Jalen Hyatt get open for like a 70-yard touchdown because he's fast? Yeah, it could happen. But like, there's no one in the game plan, and there's no one that we've seen from this Giants team because of their injuries that you could simply say that for, versus Cincinnati, who had all the reasons to kind of provide that fear and that mentality. So now we're going to move on to the final topic here. And that final topic is the one we had to talk about because it's the thumbnail of the episode, and that's Sean McDermott versus Daboll. Hello, old friend. Welcome back to Buffalo. Kevin, simply put, who do you think has the upper hand in this matchup?
I think that you would want Daboll to try to have an upper hand knowing Josh Allen, but unfortunately the Bills' offense has changed so much with 12 personnel and some of the way they use their tight ends, and their running back room is completely different, and their offensive line is completely different outside of like Deion Dawkins. I just overall, there's no upper hand given to Daboll. I think McDermott can know just as much how to stop a Daboll offense as anything. And the point is, even if there was an upper hand for Daboll, he does not have the offensive personnel to exploit the Bills defense or vice versa. Just like the O-line question, the difference is the Bengals O-line, backup O-line, is better than this unit. It really was. They had some decent players there. That some people were saying should have been a starters, and then the snow factor, and then Joe Burrow and the weapons you've already mentioned. It's not a similar comparison at all. With those weapons, you have to run different coverages. You got to respect Hayden Hurst as well. That was not the same comparison. The Bills will not be scared of a single player on the field, and they will probably blitz the heck out of Tyrod, in my opinion, and bring pressure. They get pressure with 4 anyways, but you're not going to let Tyrod go back there and run around and try to make a play. They're going to go after him like they kind of did with Trevor Lawrence. And they're going to do the same thing where they're going to put the heat on him all day. And they're really good against running quarterbacks. I think they would have been good against Daniel Jones at full strength offensive line too. They have the Lamar Jackson game plan that they're really good at, held them 3 points in the playoffs, and then held them to nothing in the second half last year. They have that game plan that they'll utilize defensive end contain, pressure up the middle. There's nowhere he can go. So I don't know if they can even run the ball out with Matt Breida too much. But I do believe McDermott has the upper hand in this. Daboll could try to bring out the stops knowing Josh, but I think it's just a completely different offense. They're not going to know. He's not a defense. If he was a defensive coach against Josh, maybe there could be something there. I don't know what he's going to scheme up with Wink Martindale's blitzing man coverage, ultimate no-nos against Josh Allen.
Yeah.
If you're going to break tendency, Joe, to beat them, you're going to lose as well. It's just not there for them with the way that they play, as it was, the Jets and Robert Saleh.
Yeah, there's also I'm blanking on his name, and correct me if I say it and you recognize it, please say it. But they're losing a linebacker who's been very good in their pass rush as well this week, the Giants. And that's kind of another thing too. Yeah, he's not playing. So that's another component of like their pass rush that they've probably been successful with that isn't going to be there. Like, and I agree with that. I think one thing that I've said before is like, Sean McDermott has seen Daboll's tendencies too. And now you're seeing a Daboll-led offense that's great. Daboll's a good coach, but they're just so banged up. And the talent is way less than having Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Like, that matters. It absolutely matters. And I think, again, yeah, you're not going to allow Tyrod to run around. You also know two things about Tyrod Taylor. One, that he's not Trevor Lawrence's height and measurables, so he's not seeing over these pass rushes. And two, that get your hands up, pressure him up the middle, and contain. He doesn't throw to the middle of the field. Like, that's just not Tyrod Taylor. All Bills fans should know this now. Like, we've seen it. It was our biggest complaint about him. He's just not a quick timing quarterback. And I think that this offense was last year, because I saw a lot of Giants games, thanks, Dad. Like, that's kind of something that they worked with, was they always had this like leak out third down option that could kind of be in the middle of the field for Daniel Jones to see. And Daniel Jones, who's a very large quarterback with a booming arm, could take advantage of those situations. I genuinely don't think Tyrod Taylor can. So if you collapse the pocket around him where he has nowhere to go, first and foremost, this isn't Tyrod Taylor of Buffalo in 2015. The man is 34 years old now. Who's to even say he still has that outside speed that could beat your edge rushers now? Because I don't know if he does. I think, like, I don't want anyone who's seeing this episode to think like I'm anti Tyrod Taylor. Like, I have all the respect in the world for that man, for his time put into Buffalo, for the fact that he was the quarterback on the team that broke the drought. The fact that like he's back in Buffalo, like, that's cool. And I have infinite respect for Tyrod Taylor. But we have watched Tyrod Taylor play for the Bills multiple years, and we know like what his game is like. I just don't see a world where Tyrod Taylor's play in this game sustains a whole 4-quarter game. I just don't see it happening. And to answer the question, I think it's Sean McDermott. I think Sean McDermott had the upper hand for the circumstances going into the game, even if the Giants were healthy. I think it's even more so in McDermott's favor now because you know Daboll's offensive tendencies, but now you have less talent than they did going into the year. Unless Barkley's back there and, you know, you're seeing some things that maybe they haven't brought out that they were saving for this game with Barkley, which could happen, sure. But then you're hoping that the execution follows the play call, and I just don't know if it can because of the injuries they've faced. So, Kevin, any final thoughts? Defensively, offensively, that you'd like to add to this conversation before we wrap it up today?
I mean, I think the Giants will try to bring pressure to do whatever they can to turn the ball over. I mean, they don't care if they get burned. I mean, they'll probably get burned if they break tendency and try something else differently. Jacksonville actually had that motto last week as well. That Giants defense is a lot better than, in my opinion, than anything. That Jacksonville defense is a lot better than anything the Giants have. Top 10 on a lot of statistical categories. You know, the Giants are 28th. So it's just not going to be anything they can get done. They only get one player that gets production. That's Kayvon Thibodeau. And he's had 4 sacks on 10 pressures, which is like epic levels of production for the limited amount of pressures. So to me, the Bills O-line is playing really good. I think players are going to be open across in the entire field. And they're going to try to put some pressure on with the, you know, Banks, the rookie corner, on Diggs. And this might be a game where you finally see some secondary option usage in this. Right. I'm not going to say Kincaid. We don't know that he's going to clear the protocol. Yeah, but you're going to see some secondary option usage in this game. That's what I'm throwing out there on the under review show. You will see some of that. Review show. You're only going to get about 70 to 80 Diggs yards, in my opinion. I think you're going to get a plenty of secondary options against the Giants because that's what the blitz is going to let you do.
Yeah, absolutely. You send enough pressure. If you're, first and foremost, if you're sending 6 or 7 man pressures in the first quarter, you probably shouldn't do that because the Bills are just going to eat you alive. Like that's just something you shouldn't do. Try to send 4-man rushes and you have man-to-man coverage. Stephon Diggs is getting open. Like someone's getting open. It's just going to happen. I like this comment from Carl Tomlin. If you ran a scrimmage and you had Daboll coach the Bills offense and McDermott coach the Bills defense, then let's see who would win. The Giants don't have the weapons, and it is not a fair question. Yeah, it's I mean, like, yeah, it's not, because it's just the circumstances surrounding the Giants. Again, like you guys know me, and like Kevin, you know me as well. When it comes to takes, I try not to have definitive takes, because I do think that football is nuanced, football is open-ended, and that anything can happen. And I do agree that anything can happen, but I do think this is within context of the circumstances surrounding your game. What the Giants have to overcome in this game is insane. It's not even just talking about like we lost one key player, we lost two key players. This offense and defense, but mainly the offense, their line is the worst pass blocking line in the league, and it lost more players. Their starting quarterback isn't playing. He hasn't had, Tyrod Taylor hasn't had reps this year, or I shouldn't say reps this year, but hasn't started a game this year. This is all insanely different to talk about when you talk about a game plan and approach versus a healthy team that just has a bad record, because that's different. That's still a healthy team. They could still execute. This team literally might not even be able to run some of the things in their playbook that they should be running. This team might not be able to do a lot. And like, I think about games where this has happened to the Bills, right? So like the difference with like the Jets and Zach Wilson is Zach Wilson has started games in the NFL recently and has been a part of that Jets offense recently, like last season. He's seen the Bills. He's seen this defense. Like this is different. But when you talk about like, let's talk about the Saints game in 2021, right? When they had to rock at their backup. Who was that? Was that Trevor Siemian or Ian Book? It was somebody that was like a really low totem quarterback. Like they couldn't do anything. They were missing linemen. They were missing their key receivers. They were missing their quarterback. At some point, those losses are too much to overcome. And like you look at the Bills defense, they lost players. They still have a majority of their starters. And those players that came in to fill in played well. The starters just aren't there for the Giants offensively. So yeah, maybe you might see the Giants score an early touchdown. You'll be like, what the hell's going on? Are the Bills doomed? Is the season over? 4 quarters of football, man. I just don't see it happening. And that's really all I wanted to say. I see Bills News Consolidated going hard in the chat. Shout out to you, man. I appreciate you putting all your input in. But Kevin, that is the end of our discussion today. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time as always. You're always a great guest to have on, and I enjoy our Gabe Davis therapy sessions. Please, if you have anything that you would like to plug, please do it now. I'd love to hear it.
Tuesday, 7 o'clock, the Going Deep podcast right here on the same network that you're watching Joe on this beautiful, glorious Saturday. And happy birthday to Joe DeRosa Sr. as well. Have fun this afternoon and evening, and enjoy the family festivities for the weekend. But yeah, you can catch me on the Going Deep podcast at Kevin Misera. You can pop me around on multiple shows throughout the week, and spaces where you can catch some of my glorious content throughout life.
Glorious content throughout life. That is an excellent statement. Yes, thank you so much again, man. I know it's probably like I think the 4th or 5th time you've been here. It's always a pleasure to have you, and always appreciate your time. To all of you in the chat today, that includes every person we brought up in the screen, to all of you listening after the fact, to all of you that have taken the time to watch this show, I truly appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time on a beautiful or not beautiful Saturday, depending on where you are located. If you could please do me, Kevin, everyone here a favor before you turn your computer off, before you carry on your Saturday activities, and just drop a like on this video and share it with any Bills fans that you may know. That will really help us out. Exposure is the best thing ever. I would appreciate it, but our network people would also appreciate it. It really throws benefits to our hard work to provide any sort of discussion we can have for you, especially on these live platforms. For Kevin Misera, my name is Joe DeRosa Jr. Joe DeRosa Sr., happy birthday. I appreciate you watching, Dad. I love you. And for all of you in the chat, I love you too. Go Bills. Hopefully we have some good, fun football on Sunday night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you next weekend. Take care.